Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And the 2030 season has been going pretty well for our Rockies. At 51 and 36, we are not only leading the National League West, we've got the best record in baseball as we sit here on July 11th preparing for the first-year player draft. The somewhat bad news is that the second best team in baseball is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are in our division and only a game and a half behind us. So that means we're in the situation where we potentially either win the division and have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, or if we slip up just a little bit over the next 2.5 months of the season, we could find ourselves in a situation where we're in a wild card game, a wild card series in the first round. So not a lot of margin for error. Some positive news. Adail Amador, who missed about 6 weeks, just came back a few days ago. And Pablo Lopez, who's been out all year with an arthritic elbow, is only 3 days away from potentially beginning a rehab assignment to boost our pitching staff. Some of our goals going really well. We're obviously on target to make the playoffs. Staff cohesion has improved, and Chandler Simpson, although he was our left fielder last year, is performing better this year, so our brain-dead owner views that as an upgrade for us. Negatively, we're struggling heavily with attendance, and that's largely driven by the difficulty we've had improving our fan interest this year. And honestly, our difficulty making much progress with fan interest throughout the playthrough after the Rockies' historically bad season here in real life in 2025. Fan loyalty dipped to pathetic after that season. And even though we've made the playoffs 4 straight years after that, we're mired in the pathetic fan loyalty, which is impacting fan interest and ultimately our financial performance. So we're still sitting here with the 26th highest budget and payroll in baseball here in 2030. And given my expectation that fan loyalty, since it's such a sticky metric, is likely to remain in that pathetic range for the foreseeable future, I don't know that there's a great opportunity for us to improve our finances materially in the next few seasons. I thought when I took over this Rockies team that we'd probably be able to get the budget into the middle of the league, think 14th, 16th, 18th, something like that over the years. I think it's still certainly possible that we get it there, but it's going to take a lot longer than I anticipated, and because we have signed a couple larger contracts over the years, it's definitely limited our financial flexibility. But because of that realization and revelation that the finances are likely to be challenging for the foreseeable future, we're trying to clean the decks a little bit. Last episode, we signed Ryan Stone, who's in AAA and having a monster year there with a 384 average after he recovered from an injury. Signed him to a 10-year extension. Gotten thoughts from the Worldwide Scouting Department, Undercover Boomer, YME943, and Prisprisful most recently, to move on from Matt Waters, who's still listed as the number 52 prospect in baseball, but we don't think there's a lot of potential there. Now that it has been a year since last year's draft, when we picked him in the first round, 24th overall, have been able to shop him, and unfortunately the other AI owners are not idiots, and they literally offered us nothing for Waters in terms of players, and we did a prospect package, and basically we had to offer a big prospect with Waters to get a prospect worse than Waters in return. So I like the idea of trying to cut our losses quickly, but even though in theory he's listed very high, nobody really seems to have any interest in him right now, but something that we'll continue investigating. Our two top prospects are the young pitcher Leo Martinez, only 20 years old, recently promoted to high A ball, and then Kevin Roberts Jr., who's a first-round pick, 5th overall in ours in 2026, that actually seems to be working out. And Avery Shaham suggested perhaps trying to lock up Leo Martinez early. Definitely much earlier than I would anticipate. Again, a guy's only 20 years old, and I just recently promoted him to high A ball. Similarly, Yeet Prime and Raymond Effinger suggested, most recently, others have suggested this as well, trying to lock up Kevin Roberts. He's a little bit older, a little more experienced, and certainly much closer to the majors with his recent promotion to AAA. And given that I'm expecting us to remain in a challenging financial position for the foreseeable future, I have decided to roll the dice, and we have made extension offers to the 21-year-old Kevin Roberts Jr. and the 20-year-old Leo Martinez. And these are massive contracts in terms of the years. 12 years for Kevin Roberts Jr., 15 for Leo Martinez, which is insane for a 20-year-old who's never pitched over high A ball. But when we look at the scouting reports that we've gotten from our scout on both of these players over the past few years, they've been steadily improving. Their ceilings have been steadily increasing, according to our scout. And their performance on the field has been consistently very strong. So I think that they're both players, if they reach their full potential, who will certainly be valued more than the numbers we're giving them. Between these two contracts and the other one that we recently signed, we're definitely rolling the dice. I don't know that we're going to hit on all three of them. But even if one of these contracts doesn't really work out and two of them do, I think we'll be in a really good spot. And if all three of them work out, it could be a critical set of decisions over these last couple of weeks in game time that really set us up to consistently succeed despite a budget that remains all not that attractive. So if and when those guys actually sign these contracts over the next few days of game time or week or two of game time, we'll certainly investigate them more fulsomely. Wasn't able to backload either of them. Certainly if we get these two guys signed, would love to put ourselves in a position where we can not actually these contracts are backloaded. Would love to put ourselves in a position where maybe we can front load a contract or two in the coming years to get the payroll a little more balanced as we head into the future, because clearly the numbers for both Roberts Jr. and Martinez are going to be increasing as these contracts move along. But we'll see what happens. With that, though, we're going to turn our attention back to the main focus of this episode, which is going to be the rookie draft, the first-year player draft. And we are on the clock with the 28th pick overall. We're also going to have the 38th pick overall with our compensatory pick. Was commented on, and I have noticed this, that with all the changes they've made to the Draft Central and the Draft Combine, they do have the supplemental picks messed up, where our $7.81 million allegedly for the supplemental pick on this page, the fourth supplemental pick, is actually the slot amount for the fourth pick overall. When we do look at Draft Central, though, they do have the correct slot amounts for the supplemental picks in there. So ultimately, no harm, no foul, although things are not necessarily perfect in terms of all of this stuff and the way that it's exhibited. And as we frequently do, got a lot of great feedback from the Worldwide Scouting Department since we posted this episode on Saturday morning. Sunday morning as I'm working on this new episode, so almost a full day for the Worldwide Scouting Department to opine. And as I noted, a lot of good feedback on what we should do, and we'll talk through that shortly. At the end of the last episode, I talked about 8 players that I was most interested in. With the work that I've done offline over the last 24 hours or so, there's a few others that I'm going to highlight that I wouldn't mind bringing on board, although they likely won't be with one of my first 2 picks. Jalen Dean, shortstop from the Yankees. Like the defense, like the speed. Think the bat with the gap power and the home run power potentially being well above average could be interesting to us. Mentioned last episode when we talked about him that didn't necessarily want to go back to the well of FSU with another first-round pick. You may remember our first round pick of this playthrough, 4th overall in 2025, was a college pitcher out of FSU, Jamie Arnold, who had a brief stint in the majors a few years ago. He's still in the minors with us now, but really has not developed. And not going to blame Jalen Dean for that, though, but probably also not going to take him in the first round, given that he's expected to go 19th overall. Perhaps unlikely that we'll be able to bring him on board. Another guy that I do like is shortstop Tim Hallinan, who was projected to go with the final supplemental pick, or is projected to go with the final supplemental pick. Another guy with more of a third baseman type profile, decent speed, high work ethic, and really good contact and gap power, along with some durability. Don't think I take him in the first round, but if he lingers a bit, he could be an option. Another guy that could end up being a second-round choice, or in a perfect world would love for him to be a third-round choice, is the starting pitcher, Rich Hannon. He's projected to go with the 32nd pick in the second round right now, out of Southern Illinois. Ground ball pitcher, throws triple digits, outstanding stamina. If he could add a third pitch, he could potentially become a pretty interesting starting prospect. Certainly could be an interesting relief prospect. Don't know that I take him even in the second round, but if he happens to fall to the third, where the value's better, in my mind, could be interesting. And then a final guy that I am thinking about and keeping an eye on is the shortstop Jay Stombaugh, expected to go with the 24th pick in the third round. Decent glove, good personality, durable, and a bat that looks potentially interesting. Decent speed, decent bunter. Not really a lot of holes in his game. He's out of Rutgers, so he's a bit more advanced. Faced a great competition level there, and think he could be an interesting guy to consider. Honestly, I could see myself taking a flyer on Stombaugh in the second round if he's around then, depending on what the rest of the player pool looks like and how many of these other guys that we've talked about in the last episode, or might be talking about a little more deeply right now, are still around. So a few other guys that I've spent some time looking at that I think could help us, whose names hopefully you might be hearing one or two in the coming rounds. So as I mentioned, there were 8 players I talked about at the end of the last episode that I had kind of honed in on a bit. 6 of them were position players, and 4 of them really didn't get any strong number 1 votes from the worldwide scouting department. Their center fielder, Phil Dingwell, who is still one of the better bats in this class, but not a huge position of need for us, and as a high schooler, he's a long way off. We also have a ton of good outfielders in our organization. If he were to fall to the supplemental pick, I'd have to certainly continue to consider him, but we're not going to go with him with the first pick. Josh Summers, shortstop. Interesting profile. Don't really know that he's got a great defensive spot unless those error and arm ratings are able to be improved. But he's supposed to go with the 16th overall pick, left-handed hitting infielder. Danny Colon expected to go 28th overall, third baseman, a really good contact hitter, not really a two-way player, although he's still considered one, and a marginal-ish glove is a guy that we're not going to go after, and the worldwide scouting department was not as enthusiastic about. And last of these guys, the shortstop, Ronnie Clifford, who's supposed to go with the 9th pick in the second round. Nice looking glove, a couple of negative personality traits, and a really good contact bat. Not that exciting with the rest of his bat. So those were the 4 least popular players among the 8. Among the position players, the shortstop Troy Durfer, who is the best defensive infielder we've come across, has high work ethic and a really good contact hitter whose gap power, home run power, and eye are all trending towards the mid-range. He was the choice in a very close vote by Jarek Braxton. Braxton, like some other guys also, but Jarek's recommendation was ultimately to go with Troy Dufer, who is also the top recommendation of our scout, and a guy who was expected to go with the last pick to Texas right before our pick on the clock here. But by far the choice of the people and the worldwide scouting department is a guy who's supposed to last until the 11th pick in the second round. So in theory, we could wait till our supplemental pick to take him. And that's the shortstop, Dervi Mahez, out of UCLA. Talked about him a lot last episode. I kind of left the episode thinking he was my favorite player, and the worldwide scouting department definitely agrees. Has faced great competition at UCLA, has a really good personality with the high work ethic in particular. Looks like a potentially very good defensive third baseman, particularly if we could improve that range. Well above average speed and good base running instincts. And we think his contact, gap power, home run power, and eye could all be above average. In the case of the contact and the gap power, well above average. And that combination ultimately is what led the preponderance of the worldwide scouting department that opined on this draft to put Mahez at the top of their list, including Wyme943, Sam Conkle, Sasha, Raymond Effinger, Undercover Boomer, Kyle B., Andrew Gratton, Jeansy, Ian, Avery Shaham, Rocket Skarmry, Mitch Fonstock, and Scott Donovan all ultimately said that Mahez was the way to go. And if we're going to go with a position player, I certainly agree. There is an argument given where he goes in the mock draft, as I noted, with that 11th pick in the second round, to get creative and maybe take a guy who's a little higher rated here and hope that Mahez falls. But if we're going to go with a position player, Mahez is the guy that I like, and I'm not going to mess around. I would take him right now if we decide to take him. There are, however, 2 pitchers that I was particularly intrigued by in the last episode. And both of those pitchers did get some support from the worldwide scouting department as well. Josh Joss, high schooler who's expected to go with the 30th pick in the second round, was the choice of Almost Scientific History Clips and Andrew Gratton. Looks like the stuff could be absolutely filthy with really good movement, ground ball tendencies, 100 miles an hour, good potential to keep the ball in the ballpark. So checks a ton of boxes, particularly for pitching in cores, decent stamina, high work ethic and adaptability, potential 4-pitch arsenal with a fastball that's already major league quality. Certainly not much to dislike about Dandy Joss. The criticisms from my perspective are that the control we don't think is ever going to be quite major league average. And as an 18-year-old, he's got a ton of work to do to just get it up to a little bit below average for a major leaguer, but certainly time to do that. And my other struggle with him is he's looking for $8 million, which is way above slot. And we could, with the money that we budgeted and put away, just afford him, but that would definitely take up just about every penny we have left to potentially add some help for this team through the trade market and taking on contracts. And given that we are, as I noted, competing to try to get to the playoffs for the 5th straight year and competing for the best record in baseball, in a perfect world, I'd rather not go way over slot and use the little tiny bit of surplus that we have left now on a pitcher. But it's certainly hard to argue that Joss is not an interesting guy to consider, and he is on the short list. And he's on the short list with Victor Esquivel. We talked about him is also last episode. He's expected to go a little earlier than Joss with the 18th pick in the second round. Another high school pitcher. He's a lefty. Normal durability, like the high adaptability. Think he can get the velocity into the mid-90s, but not to a Joss level. Better stamina and much better at holding on runners. Potential for a 5-pitch arsenal, but a lot of work to do with that changeup. I think his stuff and his movement could both be well above average, and think his control could be above average as well. I do like, for the fact that he's an 18-year-old, admittedly a little older. He's going to be 19 in about 4 months. But his stuff and movement at 35 and his control at 30, he's fairly well developed for a high school pitcher. And this is something that was noted by the group that had him number one on their list, which was NS1 CLRK and the notorious KEV. So a couple of veteran members of the Worldwide Scouting Department had Esquivel number 1. Interestingly, a lot of people who really liked Mahez number 1 had Esquivel slotted in at number 2 and believe that he's the way to go with the supplemental pick. Scott Donovan, Kyle B, YME943, Undercover Boomer, and Rocket Skarmry all had Mahez the top of their list, and then Esquivel as a 1B, 1.5, number 2 on the list, who they thought we should try to get with the supplemental pick if he's still available. So ultimately, the message from the Worldwide Scouting Department, if we just think about the preponderance of the opinions that we got, is to go with Mahez with our first pick here at number 28 overall, and then hope that Esquivel, who's expected to be picked 7 picks later than Mahez in the second round, falls to us with the supplemental pick. That was kind of where I landed in my very cursory view of this pool at the end of the last episode. And after doing additional work, and most importantly, hearing from the Worldwide Scouting Department, that is what we're going to hope to make happen. It will also help us financially, as Dervy Mahez in particular is not looking for much money at all, just $900,000. So we are going to take the shortstop out of UCLA, who we're hoping could be our everyday third baseman, perhaps by September call-up time of 2031, and make Dervy Mahez our first pick here in the 2030 draft. Let's go ahead and auto draft and see who's still available for us with that supplemental pick at number 38. Victor Esquivel, unfortunately, went just 2 picks later. Mentioned that Mahez was supposed to be the 11th pick in the second round, and Esquivel supposed to be the 18th pick in the second round. So those guys went earlier than we had hoped. Jalen Dean, who we just talked about, Rich Hannon, who we talked about, and then Troy Durfer, who we also liked, have all also come off the board relatively quickly. So we figured there would be some guys that we liked available here with our supplemental pick. Being honest, I really hoped that it was going to be Esquivel. so I'm disappointed by that. But I can't be upset that we got Dervy Mahez on board. If I had to pick Mahez or Esquivel, Mahez was going to be the guy, and that's why we picked him with our first round selection. And I'm not going to lie, here with our supplemental pick, I am intrigued by bringing another potential middle infielder on board, Jay Stombach, who we talked about at the top of the episode. Good personality, decent glove, durable, looks like the bat could be solid, and solid with his speed and his bunting ability. Just a very clean prospect coming out of Rutgers. Don't know that the power and the eye are ultimately going to get up to average major league quality, given that he is almost 22 years old. But given that he's not projected to go until the end of the third round after we've had 3 more picks, as interesting as I think he is, I'm going to roll the dice on leaving him out there a little bit longer. I did think seriously about going with Mr. Joss, again recommended by Andrew Grattan in Almost Scientific History Clips. With the money he's going to cost, though, I don't also want to use a premium pick on him. It's possible, given that we saved so much money on Mahez, that we can make it work with him. But I'm going to, given that I'm guessing a lot of other teams don't have enough money put aside to sign him either, if we're going to go after him, we're going to wait for him to fall a little bit. So we're going to pivot to what I think is just really good value with this supplemental pick, and that's the guy who was supposed to come off the board 7th overall, Phil Dingwell. We've got a lot of really good young outfielders in the system already, and as we talked about, in AAA right now too, who can help us in the near future and hopefully for the long term with some of the contracts that we've offered recently. But Dingwell at 18 years old is probably 5 or 6 years away from being able to help us at the major league level. His bonus demand is just about in line with what Slot is here, still actually saving a little bit of money. Really good range, a really good arm, decent error rating, and bat that could have well above average home run power, and above average eye, and above average contact. Does have extreme development risk. When we look at the OSA ratings, they see that same extreme development risk. They like him even better in terms of his range and his contact and his eye, not so much in terms of his power. But definitely some risk here, but I think there's also potentially really interesting value. And with the likes of Esquivel, Dean, Hannon, and Durfer gone, I think a lot of the other guys that we like at this spot still might be around with our 27th pick. Dingwell almost certainly will not be. So we are going to go ahead and bring him on board, meet his bonus demand, and although I would have loved it if Esquivel was available here, I can't complain about the way our first 2 picks have gone. Moving on to the next selection. Ooh, this is an interesting one. Doug Ford is a guy that I hadn't mentioned. He was a relief prospect who was out of Penn State, Greater Allegheny, so not facing a very good competition level. But I was really intrigued by him. He was a guy who was not projected to go in the first 5 rounds of the mock draft, so I thought I might have a little more time with him. But St. Louis apparently saw the same thing that we saw and took him with the 25th pick of the 2nd round. Danny Colon, the 3rd baseman who we talked about, has also been picked at this point. Ronnie Clifford, the shortstop, also gone. Tim Hallinan, the shortstop, we talked about briefly, also gone. Josh Summers, another shortstop, gone. So what that means, though, is that the pitcher that we were most interested in, Josh Joss, still there, still very expensive. Alistair Mitchell, a guy that we've also gotten some comments on from the Worldwide Scouting Department, another guy who, if he were to add a third pitch, could be a very interesting prospect. He's still available. So there's options on the pitching side that are still out there. But I also really like some of the position player options that are available as well. And I mentioned we've got about $3.5 million, which I would like to be using to take on some contracts potentially to help us guide this team back to the playoffs. But as I think about where we are in this draft, we've got about $3.5 million surplus. We saved a little over $3 million on Mahez and a little less than that on Dingwell. So we saved about $3.5 million on the first two guys that we've made offers to compared to what we put away in terms of their slot. So if we've got $1.1 million here and a $3.5 million extra in our budget and $3.5 million that we've saved in the first two slots, if I add up 1 million plus $3.5 million plus $3.5 million, that gets us right to $8 million. And although I'm concerned about his control, pretty much everything else about Josh Joss, except for also his inability to hold runners, is very solid. I think he's clearly good value here in the second round. Now that value is only there because he doesn't have value in terms of his bonus demand. It's too high. But he could have an outstanding four-pitch arsenal. The stuff in the movement, borderline off the charts, as we talked about. Ground ball tendencies, throws 100 miles an hour, high work ethic. If we're able to get that control up to a decent level, Dandy Joss could be a very interesting player for us. It's definitely going to completely cripple our financial flexibility for this year. So we may just be hoping that this team that we've put together can stay healthy and get the job done and then be supplemented by some of the talent that we do have in AAA over the last couple months of this season. But I think the value here for Joss suggests that we should take him. The other guy that I was thinking about strongly, and keep in mind that Joss is expected to come off the board just momentarily, 3 picks from now. The other guy that I was thinking about is Stambach. Really like him. He's supposed to go 24th in the third round. Boy, if we could get a situation where we pick Joss 3 picks before he was supposed to go, and then Stambach is still around 4 picks before he was supposed to go in the third round, I'd really like the way that this draft turned out, despite losing out on Esquivel. So we are going to go ahead and draft Mr. Joss. I'm going to try to offer him less than the $8 million. As a high schooler, he's not going to play for us this year anyways, so I may wait a little bit, make him wait things out, and hope that maybe he's willing to accept 6.5, 7.5 million. Every little penny that we can save would be helpful, but clearly we're going to, if we try to save money, want him wrapped up before the trade deadline. So if there is a little money in the budget for us to take on a contract, we can use it. But ultimately, think the opportunity to add a very high quality potential starter here is just too much value for us. And as I said, we can just make the numbers work. So we're going to draft Dandy Joss. And we're really going to hope that Stambaugh is still on the board with our third round pick. If that's the case, I'm going to feel real good about the way this draft is evolving. And I don't see him in the more recent selections. I don't have the heart to go through the others. I'm going to just scroll down, see if he's still listed on the board with that 24th pick here in the third round that he was supposed to go with. And he is. So I really like the way this has turned out for us. Stambaugh, durable, another older college player, could be helping our infield in relatively short order, which although our infield has been pretty versatile and solid for us over the years, we did move on from Jared Cerna this past offseason. Adile Amador is getting expensive. Ezekiel Tovar is out for the season and headed into a very expensive team option before he potentially hits free agency. Marcelo Myers getting more expensive. Cole Carrig is getting more expensive. So being able to hopefully over the next couple of years supplement some of those infielders I think is important, particularly because it's an area we've until this point struggled to bring good players on board through the IAFA or the draft, and a couple of experienced college infielders whose floors are hopefully reasonably high, even if their ceilings aren't incredible, are interesting options for us. And Stambaugh, also a guy where we save a little bit of money potentially compared to his slot, so he fits well from that perspective as well, given that we're way over slot with Joss. So outside of missing out on Esquivel, I don't think I could have asked for this draft to go much better than it has. And if I like the way the draft had been breaking, I love it now. Here in the fourth round, Alistair Mitchell, who we talked about, is still around. According to our scout, by far the highest potential pitcher available. Talked about him earlier. Solid stamina, solid at holding on runners. Think he can throw 100 miles an hour. This stuff could be absolutely filthy, and we think he'll have good movement on his pitches. The control, the potential concern for the 17-year-old. Fastball not far off from major league quality. He's got a curve that we think could be outstanding at well. Worst case scenario, think he could be an extremely effective and durable in terms of at least the innings that he can pitch, right-handed reliever. And if we're able to add a third or fourth pitch to him over the years, he could end up being a really good starter. Don't love the low baseball IQ, but it's a fourth round pick. Going to have to change that Johnny Lasagna nickname. But Alistair Mitchell here in the fourth round to me is just too good value for us to not accept. He's also actually another guy whose demand is a little below slot. So as we try to save every penny, he works well from that perspective as well. And we're going to bring on Alistair Mitchell with our fourth round selection. And with our fifth pick, or our fifth round pick, our sixth pick overall, probably the last pick we'll talk about in depth here, we are going to go with a catcher, Jesse Rubinoff. Interesting profile, only average-ish defensively, which we typically look for much more than that from our catchers. Hopefully could be improved over the years. He's only just turned 18 less than a month ago. It does have high adaptability and high leadership, but it's really about the bat. Potentially excellent home run power if he reaches his full potential, combined with good contact. As a fifth round pick, I think he's an interesting guy to bring into the organization. And another guy who's looking for just slightly less than slot, which given how much we're over slot with Josh Joss, The fact that all 5 of our other picks out of the first 6 are under slot by a little bit to a massive amount in terms of Mahez helps us a little bit on the financial front as well. And we're through the draft. The big names that we had talked about were obviously all off the board by the time we got to the 5th round and the 6th round. So feel like we got some interesting prospects in the middle to later rounds, but if anything becomes of them in their careers, we'll hear about it in the coming months of these episodes going forward, rather than going into depth on all of these random guys we're pinning our hopes on at this point. With the fact that we did save around $1 million additional with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks, we're going to throw out an offer to Joss now. Probably not going to accept it. You can see we've got about $9.2 million left, so we can get him signed. The money that we've saved definitely helped. Would like to save as much as possible. We'll offer him $7 million. Probably going to ultimately have to go back up to 8 to get him signed, but we'll see what happens. So we've got about a week and a half now until we get to the All-Star break. I think we'll sim through those games, see if we get any of these draftees signed and assigned to teams in the cases of the college players, although some of them I think are also in the draft league, so we may not have them immediately. 3 at Seattle, and then we're home against Arizona, and then home against Seattle. So 9 games left between now and the All-Star break. Certainly would love to win at least 5 of them. We're 5-4 in the month of July so far. Certainly don't want to do worse than that over these next 9 games, particularly with 6 of them being at home. And we'll find out if we can maybe also get some of those bold contracts that we offered to some of the top prospects in our organization signed over these next few days before we end the episode as well. And it's always a good feeling when you get your first round pick signed quickly, and Jervy Mahez has accepted that offer we made to him. He is in the draft league with the West Virginia Back Bears, so we're going to let him continue to play there. Once that season ends in the next month or so, we'll likely assign him to high A or to single A, and the hope is that maybe we'll be able to get him even into high A before the end of this year. But right now, just going to let him continue to play in the draft league, and we'll let him get some experience there before we bring him into our organization. We could call him back, obviously, but I tend to just let players play out in the draft league, typically college guys, and then assign them to our Class A team once the draft league season ends. One other good piece of news, actually 2 other good pieces of news. The minor good piece of news is that we won the first game after the draft against Seattle 9-5 yesterday, so that is positive. And Pablo Lopez is now ready to begin the rehab assignment. He's missed all year with that arthritic elbow. Not a great sign for his future. 34 years old. We will certainly be declining that $25 million team option for next year. But I don't think anyone's going to want to trade for him. But it does allow us to begin, now that he's healthy, potentially trying to include him in a trade right now, but at least also to get that rehab assignment started. And we've gotten the young catcher, our 5th round pick, Jesse Rubinoff, signed as well, 18 years old. He's not going to be playing professionally this year, but good to still have him on board. Won 1-0 against Seattle. Braden Nett, who's having an outstanding season, ran his National League leading win total to 12-4 record. The ERA now under 3 after 6 innings of scoreless baseball. And things are going well on the field for our Rockies at this point. And a very big day for us. We completed the sweep in Seattle, so 3-0 to start off these final 9 games before the All-Star break. So certainly hoping to go more than 5-4 in those 9 games now. And Kevin Roberts and Leo Martinez both have signed these wacky contracts we've given to them as youngsters. Part of the reason I was a little reticent about giving Roberts a deal is that we've struggled so much with fan interest, and felt that the opportunity to be signing him through those arbitration years, when presumably he's a very productive and very popular player, would give us some artificial boosts, but that's still several years from now, and felt that ultimately getting him signed for a contract that could be really good value for us, and also obviously provide him a massive amount of financial certainty against injury or underperformance risks, made sense. The fans, only a slight increase. He's been obviously one of the top prospects in our system since we picked him 5th overall, but only a 1-point bump, so didn't play the fan interest game as effectively with him as perhaps we could have over the next few years. But we do potentially have a very big-time player who's hitting .280 with 3 homers and 9 ribbies in 25 at-bats since we promoted him to AAA, now signed for the long term. 12 years, $133 million. He would have been making the major league minimum these next few years, so we're obviously overpaying him for the next few seasons. Get into the arbitration years where we probably move from overpaying him a bit in this contract to hopefully underpaying him significantly by the end of those arbitration years, and then those free agent years where he's kind of 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 million at the end. Hopefully will be good value years for us. He was not willing to include team options in those seasons as we negotiated with him. Hopefully he's still a $30 or $40 million ball player in his early 30s at the end of this contract. Definitely a lot of risk for us if things don't work out with him. But as I talked about earlier, given what our scout has kind of seen about him over the years, when we drafted him, we kind of thought his talent was there. We thought he was a 70 overall player in terms of his potential, but saw him at 55 in terms of contact, 65 power, and 55 eye in terms of his ceilings. And at this point, we think the contact has improved a bit, and the power and the eye have both also improved. And he's continued to kind of progress in terms of his current abilities. So Roberts Jr. is locked up, and then the contract that could even be wackier but could also be better for us. Leo Martinez, the number 31 prospect in baseball. We have signed a 20-year-old pitcher to a 15-year contract. He was willing to give us team options in his mid-30s, so that, I guess, limits the risk a little bit. It's really only 13 years of guarantees for us. If he becomes a solid number 4 major league starter, it's a decent contract, and clearly our hope is that he ends up being a 3rd starter, a 2nd starter, maybe even if everything goes incredibly well, a number 1 starter. He doesn't throw incredibly hard, and I don't think his stuff is ever going to be all that great, but hopefully average-ish stuff with good movement and good control, if he develops the way we hope, means he can be a great 3, maybe even a solid 2 for us, and with the money we're likely to be paying him. If that works out well, think that the Martinez contract could become an incredible asset for us also. And if it blows up on us, the peak is 5, 6, 7 million a year, even for a team like Colorado, that's not going to be crippling. Clearly, when we get into those 16, 18, $20 million a year for Kevin Roberts, if injuries or ineffectiveness derail his career, that will be a more significant issue for us. But hopefully that won't happen. And another signing complete, Jay Stombaugh, the third-round shortstop, also signed. He's also happens to be playing in the draft league right now, but hopefully we'll have him back in the not-too-distant future. It doesn't look like he's a regular starter in the draft league, but we'll still let him finish his season there before getting him into A-ball as well in the month of August. And we did take 2 out of 3 against the division rival Diamondbacks, so 5-1 over the 6 games since the draft. Certainly would hope to win the series against Seattle at home, so if we could get 2 out of 3 at least against Seattle, we'll feel real good about where we stand as we hit the All-Star break here in 2030. And we got Phil Dingwell, the young outfielder who we pick with our supplemental pick signed. Also, Alistair Mitchell, the flyer on the young pitcher. The other young pitcher, Josh Joss, not surprisingly, wants more money. We're probably have to go to the full $8 million on him, which we can just barely afford to do, as we've talked about. So we'll try to get him locked up as we prepare for the All-Star break, split the first 2 games in Seattle, or against Seattle at home. Obviously would love to win this one here today to head into the All-Star break having won 4 consecutive series if we can win this one today. And Joss says it's our last shot to sign him, which is not surprisingly. Says he wants the $8 million. We offered him $7 million, and that didn't get it done. It'll leave us with just under $1 million, so we're probably not going to be able to be too active in the trade market, at least in terms of bringing on salary. But with the way the team has been playing, hopefully bringing Joss on board will ultimately be more important for us than supplementing the roster for this season. And we did win the final game of the series against Seattle. So as we head into the All-Star break, we are the number 1 team in baseball in terms of the power rankings. Looking at the division, 8-2 over our last 10, 7-2 since the draft. We're now 5 up on the Dodgers. Our .604 winning percentage, still the best in all of baseball. The second best team in baseball now is the Texas Rangers at 55-42. So feel as we prepare for the All-Star break that we're in a pretty good position to guide this team back to the playoffs. Nieves tied for second in the league in homers. Simpson continues to run like crazy, leading the league in steals easily. Net, as we've talked about, leading the league in wins. And Wellington Herrera continues to lead the National League in saves. And before we officially finish off the episode, we'll take a look at the All-Star Prospects game roster, as well as how many of those guys near and on top of the leaderboards in the National League made the National League All-Star team. Taking a look, no surprise that the recently signed to a 15-year contract, Leo Martinez, is going to be representing us as a pitcher in the Prospects game. Matt Waters, and I mentioned there was absolutely no interest at all in him in the trade market, even though that was a good idea brought up by several viewers to consider moving on from him. He still made the Prospects game by reputation, although he's hitting just .231 in rookie ball for us. And then no surprise that Kevin Roberts Jr., who's similar to Martinez, recently signed that massive contract, is going to be representing us in the Prospects game as well. Turning to the All-Star game proper, Braden Net with that 12-4 record and 2.93 earned run average, and Wellington Herrera leading the league with those 30 saves are both Colorado pitchers who made the All-Star team. Our former pitcher, Dre Jameson, now a reliever for the Cubs, made the team as well, although with those 97 and a third innings pitched and a 6-2 record, I'm guessing he's actually been starting some games. Yeah, he started 17 out of 19 games. Not really sure why they list him as a reliever for the All-Star break, or the All-Star game. And some other massive names, obviously, with Skeens, Skubal, and Yamamoto also on the All-Star team. Position player-wise, nothing except for Mr. Nieves. Little surprised that catcher-wise, Romo didn't make it. Last time I checked, he was having a pretty nice offensive season, and he's obviously a great defensive catcher. But 3 All-Stars for us this year. Gus Nieves having a nice bounce-back year. 279 average, 23 homers, 58 ribbies, 136 WRC plus, and a 2.1 WAR for us. So the right fielder / DH Nieves, the starting pitcher Braden Net, and the closer Wellington Herrera are our All-Stars for the Rockies here in 2030. Romo, yeah, pretty solid year for a catcher. 275 average, been a league average offensive player, 2.2 WAR with the great defense, but he has slowed down a little bit offensively since the last time we checked in. But I like the way the draft has gone. I like the way we've rolled the dice on 2 of the top 3 prospects in our organization, signing Roberts and Martinez to those long extensions not long after we signed Ryan Stone to that extension. So we're trying to adapt to the fact that we don't have a lot of money and a lot of financial flexibility. If those contracts work out, could be huge for us. If they don't, it could be painful. But again, with what we know about these players, what we've seen about them in terms of our scouting reports and how they've performed, you never know with a guy in their early 20s, and obviously injuries are something that can impact anybody, but I feel like they were risks worth taking given how we're positioned here in Colorado. And we'll find out what, if anything, we do as we head into the trade deadline in our next episode, and we'll find out how those contracts ultimately work out for our Rockies over the next dozens of episodes, hopefully. Until the next time, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.